Fellas, what's going on? Mike D here. Quick message. Today, I want you to think about what you're good at, and I want you to think about your gifts, all right? What you're good at and your gifts. But then I want you to also think about what are you passionate about and what is your interest, or what are your interests? So what are you good at in your gifts and what you're passionate about and what are your interests? Okay. And ultimately, if you think about like, an X and a Y axis or whatever, or a supply and demand curve or whatever, you want your gifts and your skills and things that you're good at to intersect with your interest, your passions, right? So you want them to intersect. And so to that point, when you think about your gifts, your skills, and you think about things that you're interested in, your passions and all of that stuff, your interests, what are you doing to make those two things intersect? Like your gifts. Gifts are something that we all have, right? We are all blessed with, gifts. There are not all the same gifts now. Everybody's not gifted in the same thing, but we all have some level of gift. We have some level of something that it puts us in a place in which we are potentially seen as an expert, or we're better than the average man in some aspect or some area of life. And that's something that we've been blessed with. The problem is very few of us have taken time to unwrap that gift. You think about this. A gift is when you get a gift for a birthday or whatever, to get to the gift, you have to unwrap it. So if you have this gift that's inside of you that's been sitting there and you've never unwrapped it, sometimes you don't even know that that gift is present. OK, so gifts are there. We just have to unwrap them. But then once we unwrap them, we have to cultivate them and help them to grow and develop and nurture them and expose them to different things so we can kind of tweak them and build on them. But long story short, gifts are present and everybody has at least one gift. Some of us or most of us have multiple gifts, but everybody has a gift. The question is, have you unwrapped it, right? Now, skill, you think about skill, skills are typically learned. OK, so you go to school or you go to some training program, or due to experience, you become skilled in something. You're a skilled tinkerer. If somebody needs something put together, they know to call you and you're the one that can put it together because over the years, you've become accustomed with putting things together. You're skilled because you've worked with your hands for years and you know how it works. So you know how things operate, so to speak. You've gone to school and you've become trained in a specific area. You have a specific skill that, you are now qualified or certified to handle and or do. Skills tend to be learned. OK, back to what I was saying. Gifts are already present. They just have to be unwrapped and cultivated. Skills are learned. Right. And so when you think about skills and gifts, then think about from the perspective of what are you good at? What are you good at doing? What do people constantly approach you and say, yo, man, that's awesome. What do people say that to you about? OK, it could be anything from cutting hair to cutting grass to drawing to speaking to communicating via interview format to doing digital stuff whatever, writing, whatever it may be. What are areas of your life that people tend to routinely come back to you and emphasize that you're pretty doggone good at that? OK, so you have gifts and skills, but then you have scenarios in which you're really good at something. OK, so on one side of the coin, how do you mishmash all of that up? Use those gifts, use those skills, but then take the feedback from others in the sense of, you're pretty good at something. How do you mismatch that up into something that you do on a regular basis? Whether that be your 9-to-5 job or a business you create or simply a hobby, how are you, it's a challenge to an extent, how are you utilizing that on a very regular basis? How are you cultivating that? Okay, that's one side of the coin. The flip side of the coin is when you think about, when you stop and you think about it from I want to put it in a proper way. When you think about your passions, or when you think about things that you have interest in, what are those things? The way that I separate gifts and passions, and this is just my own way of looking at it. Gifts are already there and present. You just have to unwrap them. Passions, you have to go and discover. So to find your passions, a lot of times you have to be exposed to various things, right? So like, you don't know that you're passionate about playing the piano if you've never touched the piano, or you don't know that you're passionate about travel if you've never been on an airplane or you've never gone anywhere. You know what I'm saying? You don't know if you're passionate about helping kids if you've never volunteered or been around children. You don't know what your passions are until you expose yourself to various things, right? So as fathers, we understand that to an extent, but it's imperative on us to make sure that our children get those levels of exposure so that they can develop things that they're passionate about early on, right? So going back to the whole premise of gifts, skills, and feedback from others that basically give you that validation that you're good at something. From a father's perspective, how do we influence or instill that in our children? And how do we help them to uncover the gifts that they have inside of them? How do we help them to develop skills and to solicit feedback on things that they do so that they can start building a level of confidence from an internal perspective on the things that they've been blessed with? But then on our part, how do we then expose them to various opportunities, various scenarios to help them to start seeing things that they're passionate about? Because ultimately, we want that axis, or the X and the Y axis, or the supply and demand curve, whatever the thing is right there. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We want that intersection of the gifts and their passions to happen. And the earlier that can happen for our kids, the earlier we can pour gasoline on that fire and allow them to grow and develop into who they're supposed to be in life. Now, that might not be what I want them to be, but ultimately their life is not my life. Their life is meant to be lived by them. And I look at fatherhood as, my role in fatherhood is basically helping to cultivate and nurture and bring out the gifts that are inside my children. But then the flip side of that is to expose them to a lot of different things so that they can start developing their passions, so that ultimately they can match their gifts with their passions and live a productive, but also a fulfilled life, right? So once again, one side of the coin, you have the gifts, you have the skills, you have where you're, the feedback from others regarding, where you actually have, proven yourself to be really good. But then the other side of the coin, you have passions, but then you also have your interest. So you might have something that you're not overly passionate about, but it kind of piques your interest. You don't know what's going to pique your interest if you've never been exposed to it. Okay, so that goes back to it. From a father's perspective, how do we do that with our children? Exposing them to different things, taking them to different places, opening up windows and doors to, different opportunities so that they can see something they're not used to seeing on a very regular basis. But I'm kind of deviate a little bit here. I want you to also think about how kids don't always do what they're told, but they almost always repeat what they see or replicate what they see in life. So if I'm trying to help my children cultivate their gifts, build their skills, solicit feedback so that they can grow and develop in that realm, but then also expose them to opportunities and scenarios so that they can start developing passions and levels of interest. If I'm doing that for them, but then they look at daddy and they say, Dad, dude, what are your gifts? What skills are you learning and developing? how are you getting feedback on improving in that realm? Or dad, what are your passions, or what are you exposing yourself to on a regular basis to open up a window to potential opportunities to develop passion and levels of interest? Dad, what are you doing? And that's something that we as fathers, as Black fathers, we have to answer on a regular basis to ourselves before our kids ask it to us. Because if we don't do those things on our own, if we are not willing to do those, basically be a walking billboard of what we're trying to help them to grow into, then it's going to be an uphill battle, because then we start jumping back into the old school model of do as you're told, or do as I say, not as I do. You know what I'm saying? It's like people used to say that back in the day, and back in the day that used to work because you didn't have any documentation to back up anything. You didn't have videos and emails and old school pictures and stuff floating around to validate or invalidate what you say or didn't say. But now, because all this stuff is out there and our lives are pretty much on display for the world to see, we have to be honest and be transparent with our children and how we operate. And if we are not, then we end up becoming a hypocrite. And, once my kids are old enough to understand what a hypocrite is, I don't want them to think that I am one of those. Right. So long story short, gifts, skills, soliciting feedback to understand where you really do have skills and gifts. And there's a point to that. There's a lot of people that will say, I'm a great cook, or I'm skilled in the kitchen, but nobody eats your food. That's why it's important to solicit feedback. Okay. Or I'm a gifted speaker, and every time you speak, folks are leaving the room. Bruh, you're probably not that gifted as a speaker. You know what I'm saying? And so when we stop and we think about these things, that's the whole point of soliciting feedback. It's not about other people's opinions drive what we do. It's more so about us really taking time to be honest, because I think my cooking is good, but if my family gives me the thumbs down after dinner, I know the cooking was not good that day, no matter how much I try to sell it. Okay. And, so that's the whole point of soliciting feedback, because I'm not a big person on, needing the world to validate what I'm doing and all. But it is good to have folks who you trust and people whose opinion you value to give you feedback so that you can grow and build from that. Because if we don't have a community in which we're, interacting with or dealing with or, hanging out with on a regular, what ends up happening is we just basically stew in our own ideas. And in some regards, that's okay. But you also need to put your ideas out into practice to see if they're valid, or put your skills to work and see if you're actually really that good, or test out these gifts that you think you have to see if they really are gifts, or if you just have never looked to see if they're gifts at all. You know what I'm saying? Little things like that. So that's the importance of it. It's not to put too much stock into other people's opinions, but you do want to get feedback, because that helps you to iterate, to grow, to develop. Because ultimately, Black fathers, now is the time to be the best father that we can be. And so any tip, any, scenario, any life hack, that can help me to be a better father, I'm all about it. You dig? So once again, then expose ourselves to different things so that we can develop our own passions and interests as well, so that our kids can then see us and we can ultimately be the model for, for doing things the right way. Okay. And that's what it's all about, man. We got to live our best life. We got to be a walking billboard for what we believe, for what we aspire to be. We have to be it, man. We can't just fake the funk on a nasty dunk, as they said back in the day. We can't fake the funk. You know what I'm saying? We got to actually be it, man. And the more of us that decide to truly live it and be it, the better our communities will be, the better that we all will be ultimately, and generations will change. So Black fathers, y'all do your thing. Visit blackfathersnow.com. And until next time, holla at your boy.